It's not every day you find yourself justifying ownership of a brand new sapphire blue velvet L-shaped sectional to two confused police officers, while it teeters halfway out of a moving truck, still wrapped in protective plastic, and being accused of grand larceny by a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a luxury retirement ad, dripping in diamonds even though it was only 2 in the afternoon. She stood on her immaculately trimmed lawn, pointing at the couch and shrieking that I was a common thief trying to escape with her custom-ordered masterpiece. How did I end up here? That, unfortunately, is not a short story, but it is a wild one. It started a month earlier when I closed on a modest 3-bedroom ranch in Oak Haven Estates. The neighborhood looked ideal, tree-lined streets, decent schools, quiet vibe. I'd heard murmurs from my realtor about the particular nature of the HOA president, but I'd brushed it off. Big mistake. My old couch was a sagging relic from my bachelor days, brown corduroy, hideous and offensive to the fresh, clean aesthetic I was going for in my new place. After weeks of hunting, I found the couch, a bold, stunning sapphire velvet sectional. I splurged, rented a truck since the store's delivery waitlist was ridiculous, and enlisted my friend Dave to help. By early afternoon, we were unloading the beast. We had just maneuvered one end of the sectional toward the open garage when trouble rolled up. Literally. A white Cadillac Escalade pulled to a halt across the street, its paint gleaming like it had just been detailed by angels. Out stepped the president herself, Priscilla Periwinkle. Pastel pink athleisure, flawless silver coiffure, oversized sunglasses, and an expression that made it clear I'd already ruined her day. She looked us over, Dave in his sweaty t-shirt, me equally grimy, and landed on the couch with an expression of suspicion and distaste. "Good afternoon," she said smoothly, voice like a blade wrapped in silk. "I don't recall approving this vehicle for commercial deliveries. Are you residents or conducting unauthorized business?" I wiped my brow. "Hi there. I'm Mark Thompson, just moved into number 47. That's my friend Dave and this," I gestured grandly at the couch, "is my new sofa." Her lips thinned. "Number 47? The Henderson property? I wasn't aware it sold. HOA policy requires new resident registration within 7 days. It's on my list for tomorrow," I replied with forced cheer. "Just trying to unload while I've got help." Then her eyes zeroed in on the couch. Her gaze lingered long enough to curdle milk. "That's quite a unique piece," she said, "rather large. Are you sure it'll even fit?" "Oh, we measured," Dave offered. "It's tight but she'll make it." She ignored him completely. "Where did you acquire such an item?" Her tone had shifted, from suspicious to interrogative. "Miller's Fine Furniture downtown," I replied. "Brand new. We've got the receipt in the truck if you're worried about." Her eyes narrowed. "Miller's? How odd. That particular sectional, in that exact sapphire velvet, looks identical to one I ordered months ago from a boutique. It was due for delivery this week to my storage unit. There may have been a mix-up." I blinked. "With all due respect, ma'am, this is definitely my sofa. I chose it myself, paid for it, and picked it up today. It's not a mix-up." "It even has the flaw," she snapped, pointing to a faint imperfection on the velvet nap near the armrest. "Exactly as my designer warned." Dave and I exchanged incredulous looks. Was she seriously claiming this couch was hers based on a tiny scuff? "President Periwinkle," I said slowly, "I can assure you, this sofa is mine. Yours is probably still en route to your storage unit." She lifted her chin. "Don't patronize me. I know what I ordered. And what I'm seeing is my property, being furtively unloaded by a non-registered resident using an unmarked truck." Dave scoffed. "We're sweating in the open sun. How is that furtive?" "Exactly," she snapped. "Brazen. I'm calling the authorities." "You're calling the cops over a couch?" I said, disbelief breaking through my attempt to stay calm. "I have the paperwork right here." "Don't move," she barked, already dialing on her diamond-studded iPhone. "I don't want you tampering with evidence. This could be grand larceny." And just like that, she launched into a breathy, urgent call to the dispatcher. "Yes, I need officers at 47 Oak Haven Drive immediately," she said. "There's a man here attempting to steal a valuable piece of furniture, from me. He's trying to force it into the house now." She stared at me like she'd already won. Dave's mouth hung open. I felt my jaw tighten. This woman wasn't just delusional, she was dangerous. Within 10 minutes, a cruiser pulled up. 2 officers stepped out with practiced patience, the kind reserved for neighborhood disputes that spiral into full-blown nonsense. Priscilla Periwinkle rushed toward them, spewing accusations like a lawn sprinkler on full blast. "This man has my sofa, my custom-ordered sapphire sectional. He's trying to claim it's his." And just like that, the most surreal afternoon of my life began. All because I decided to upgrade my living room. The battle for the sapphire sectional wasn't about upholstery anymore. It had transformed into a full-on turf war. Priscilla Periwinkle, the queen bee of Oak Haven Estates, wasn't defending furniture, she was defending her throne. And unfortunately for her, she'd picked the wrong new resident to try and steamroll. Officer Ramirez, young, sharp-eyed, and unreadable, stood beside the older, slower-moving Officer Miller, no relation to the furniture store, though I couldn't help but smirk at the coincidence. They listened to President Periwinkle's version of events with the detached patience of professionals who'd seen far too many neighborhood dramas. She painted herself as the victim of a brazen daylight heist. According to her, I was a common thief in disguise, trying to smuggle away her priceless piece under the noses of law-abiding citizens. She cited her role as HOA president with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice, implying that her word alone should be enough to condemn me. She gestured toward the couch, still wrapped in plastic, gleaming with newness, as if it were her missing child miraculously recovered, but now held hostage by criminals. My blood boiled, but I knew better than to match her hysteria with outrage. Bureaucracy is allergic to emotion. And I, a project manager fluent in timelines, contracts, and cold hard documentation, had come prepared. Officer Ramirez finally turned to me neutral-faced. "Sir, could you explain your side of this?" Dave, ever loyal, jumped in. "This is insane. We just picked it up from Miller's. He paid for it." I put a hand on his arm to steady both of us. "My name is Mark Thompson," I began, keeping my voice level. "I'm the new owner of 47 Oak Haven Drive. I closed on the house last month. This sapphire blue velvet sectional was purchased by me, personally, on Tuesday from Miller's Fine Furniture. I have the sales receipt, the card transaction, the order confirmation email. All of it has my name, this address, and a full description of the exact sofa in question." I pulled out my phone and opened the email, enlarging the screen. "You'll see the order was placed 3 weeks ago. Pickup was scheduled for today." Priscilla scoffed from the sidelines. "Emails can be faked. Receipts forged. He probably found it on the curb and made up the paperwork." Officer Miller cut in, calm but firm. "Ma'am, we'll review any documentation Mr. Thompson can provide. Sir, could you show us the email?" I handed over my phone. The Miller's Fine Furniture letterhead was front and center, along with the product code, purchase amount, and pickup date, all matched to me. "And you have a physical receipt as well?" Ramirez asked. "In the glove box," I said. "Along with the truck rental agreement. Also in my name." I added, "And the original product tags, still intact. We took them off when we loaded the couch. They're in the folder too." Dave and I walked to the truck. I retrieved the folder and handed it over. A crisp receipt, my name and address, a clear purchase line for the sapphire sectional. The tags were thick cardboard with barcodes and SKU numbers, identical to the email and receipt. Ramirez compared all 3. They matched. Then he turned to Periwinkle. "And you, ma'am, you said this was a custom order. From which store?" She hesitated. A flicker of doubt passed over her polished expression. "Lashik Chateau Boutique," she said at last. "Downtown. Very exclusive. They only work with private clients. I have the confirmation, on my home computer." Gone was the story of a storage unit delivery. The lie shifted like sand under pressure. "And what was the delivery date?" Ramirez asked. "This week," she answered, less certain now. "They were supposed to call me." Her eyes flicked to the sofa again, as if hoping a hidden nameplate would magically validate her claim. The officers exchanged a glance. The kind that says, "Here we go again." Officer Miller turned to me. "Mr. Thompson, this is clearly a contentious issue. Mrs. Periwinkle is insistent this is her property. And I'm equally insistent," I replied evenly, "that it is mine, and I have the proof to back it up." "She has none." Priscilla gasped. "I will get my proof. I just need time." Officer Ramirez nodded slowly. Given that Mr. Thompson has provided verifiable documentation linked to this address, and you, Mrs. Periwinkle, do not currently have your own, we're siding with Mr. Thompson's claim of ownership for now. Relief surged through me. But, he continued, and my heart sank again, in the interest of fairness and to allow you the opportunity to produce your alleged proof, we're going to ask that Mr. Thompson move the couch into his garage or home, somewhere out of public view for the next 24 hours. Officer, I began to protest, it's my sofa. I shouldn't have to tiptoe around this. We understand, Officer Miller said. But we're trying to avoid escalation. If Mrs. Periwinkle can produce a dated receipt and matching order confirmation from Lashik Chateau Boutique, then we can revisit the claim. Otherwise, the matter ends there. I exhaled slowly. There was no winning outright today. But I could see they weren't buying her story either. Fine, I said. We'll move it into the garage. Excellent, said Ramirez. Mrs. Periwinkle, you have until 3 p.m. tomorrow to provide proof, either to us or directly to Mr. Thompson. We suggest involving a third-party mediator from the HOA if necessary. Priscilla looked like she'd bitten into something bitter. 24 hours? She repeated, scandalized. That's hardly enough time to contact my designer. This interloper, she shot me a venomous glare, is attempting to defraud me. And with that, she turned sharply, marched back to her Escalade, and drove off in a huff of offended pride, muttering about the decline of neighborhood standards. Dave and I looked at each other. The sofa stood motionless between us, beautiful, blue, and caught in the crossfire of petty tyranny and hard proof. The war wasn't over, but round one was mine. The officers gave Dave and me a nod as they prepared to leave. Try to keep the peace, folks, Officer Miller said with a slight edge to his tone that made it clear he already suspected who the true disruptor of peace might be. Then they were gone, leaving us alone on my driveway with a couch that had somehow become the centerpiece of a neighborhood drama. Dude, Dave muttered, shaking his head. That woman is certifiable. Lashik Chateau Boutique? Sounds like a poodle groomer. I exhaled slowly, realizing just how tightly I'd been wound. You have no idea, Dave. She's not just any neighbor. She's the HOA president. And I've got a bad feeling this is just the appetizer. We wrestled the rest of the sectional into the garage, its sapphire velvet gleaming mockingly under the fluorescence. Each section felt heavier than the last, not because of weight but because of what it now represented. As I locked the garage door behind us, I made a silent vow. If Priscilla Periwinkle wanted a war over a piece of furniture, she was going to get one. But she was about to learn that I came equipped with spreadsheets, documentation, and a personality built around never backing down when I knew I was right. Stage 1 was clear. Secure my evidence. Stage 2, find out everything I could about Lashik Chateau Boutique. Stage 3, understand just how deep Prissy P's delusion, or malice, really ran. This was no longer about a sofa. This was about principle. And, if I was being honest, about the quiet satisfaction of proving her wrong in the most undeniable way possible. The rest of Saturday didn't unfold the way I'd planned. There were no organized bookshelves or cozy setup sessions. Instead, Dave and I, once refueled with pizza and beer, went over every scrap of documentation related to the couch. We photographed the receipts, the store tags, the rental truck paperwork. I took meticulous photos of the sectional itself, still wrapped in plastic, from every possible angle. I made sure to capture the tiny imperfection on the armrest that Priscilla had latched onto with such ridiculous fervor. The digital timestamps and geolocation data on those photos were airtight. Next, I called Miller's Fine Furniture and asked to speak to Sarah, the associate who had helped me make the purchase. She remembered me instantly. Oh, the blue velvet one? Yes, Mr. Thompson. Gorgeous choice. Did everything arrive okay? I gave her the condensed version of events, trying to keep my voice level and not sound like a lunatic. She said she ordered it from somewhere else? Sarah said, scandalized. That's impossible. That specific sectional is part of our brand new Azure Dream line. It wasn't available for custom order anywhere else. And you were one of the first to buy it? SKU 74B927. We definitely don't do wholesale, and especially not with anyone named Lashik Chateau Boutique. Bingo. Sarah, would it be possible to get a letter from your manager on company letterhead? Something confirming my purchase, the item details, and that your store doesn't supply or affiliate with anything called Lashik Chateau Boutique. Absolutely, she said, her voice tight with righteous indignation. I'll talk to Mr. Henderson. This woman sounds like a total bully. We've had weird calls before, but never anything like this. An hour later, Mr. Henderson himself called me back. He was every bit as supportive. Not only did he promise to prepare a notarized letter by Monday morning, he also offered to search their statewide customer database for any record of Priscilla Periwinkle. He highly doubted anything would turn up. Feeling bolstered, I went online to look up Lachic Chateau Boutique. Nothing. Not a single furniture store, design firm, or even a boutique by that name anywhere in the city or the state. There was a chic chateau pet spa 3 counties over, which sent Dave into another round of laughter. Maybe she thinks her poodle ordered it, he chuckled. I documented everything, taking screenshots of my fruitless search and time-stamping them. The evidence was mounting. Sunday morning, I decided to do some reconnaissance. Disguised as a friendly neighborhood stroll, I passed by Priscilla's towering 2-story colonial. It was exactly what you'd expect. Trimmed hedges, magazine-worthy landscaping, and her white Escalade glinting in the driveway. No sign of any deliveries. No moving trucks. No blue velvet. Later that day, while checking my mail, I crossed paths with her as she retrieved hers. I gave her a courteous but firm greeting. Good afternoon, Mrs. Periwinkle. Any luck finding that paperwork for the sofa? Her smile was ice cold. My designer is out of the country until Tuesday, Mr. Thompson. You'll just have to be patient. The truth will prevail. There was something in her voice, though, a tremor she couldn't hide. Her certainty was cracking. Out of the country, I murmured as I walked away. How convenient. The police deadline passed at 3 p.m. with no appearance from her. At 4 p.m., I called Officer Miller's non-emergency line. She hasn't contacted us, he confirmed. No documentation either. He didn't sound surprised. Looks like it's your sofa, Mr. Thompson. Officially. I thanked him. But I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. I knew enough to realize Priscilla Periwinkle wasn't the type to admit defeat. Especially not publicly. Her ego wouldn't allow it. Monday morning, I picked up the notarized letter from Miller's. It was perfect. Every detail of my purchase, from the product name to the pickup date, was included. It even clarified that the Azure Dream model was exclusive to their store and unavailable for wholesale. Lachic Chateau Boutique, it stated plainly, had no relationship with Miller's whatsoever. I made multiple copies. Holding that document felt like holding a weapon. And just in time. That afternoon, I found an official-looking envelope in my mailbox bearing the Oak Haven Estates HOA seal. Inside was a violation notice. Dear Mr. Thompson, it has come to the attention of the Oak Haven Estates Homeowners Association Board of Directors that you are in violation of Article 4, Section 3B of the Community Bylaws. Storage of unsightly items, specifically a large non-operational vehicle, rental moving truck, license plate, redacted, parked on a residential street for a period exceeding 2 hours on Saturday. Furthermore, household goods, furniture, were left exposed in an open garage, visible from the street on Saturday and Sunday, in violation of community standards. A fine of $100 for each violation, $200 total, is hereby levied. Failure to remit payment within 15 days will result in further penalties. Signed, Priscilla Periwinkle, President, Oak Haven Estates HOA. I laughed out loud. It was so petty. So laughably transparent. The truck was gone Saturday evening. The garage was only open while we were unloading and notably while the police were present, an incident she instigated. This wasn't enforcement. It was retaliation. She had accused me of theft, called the police, humiliated me in front of my new neighbors. And now she was using her title to punish me through technicalities. But I was no longer angry. I was focused. Phase 1 of Operation Sofa Liberation was complete. Phase 2, Operation Precipice Takedown, had begun. I carefully filed the violation notice in a new folder labeled HOA Shenanigans. It was already getting thick. I needed to understand the battlefield. I needed information. I needed leverage. And I needed to find Priscilla Periwinkle's real vulnerabilities. So I decided to do something she'd actually asked of me. I went to register as a new resident with the HOA. Not because I was conceding to her authority. Because I wanted access. I walked into the HOA's management office, a dull storefront in a tired strip mall. Behind the desk sat a tired-looking woman named Carol, who visibly wilted when I said I lived in Oak Haven Estates. "Oh, President Periwinkle's community," she said, almost whispering. I filled out the paperwork, paid the small administrative fee, and asked for copies of all publicly available HOA documents. The bylaws, the CC&RS, the financials, the meeting minutes, everything. Carol hesitated. "Well, the bylaws and CC&RS are standard," she said cautiously. "Meeting minutes are usually distributed by President Periwinkle. Financials are presented at the annual meeting." "Are they not available for review by members at other times?" I asked, "as required under state HOA transparency laws?" I didn't know the actual laws, but it sounded good. Carol blinked. Her mouth opened slightly. I waited. "I suppose so," Carol finally said, clearly uneasy. "President Periwinkle usually handles those requests directly. She likes to ensure members understand the context." "I'm quite adept at understanding context," I replied with a calm smile, aiming for friendly determination rather than a threat. "Perhaps you could just point me to where they're filed. I wouldn't want to bother President Periwinkle unnecessarily." With a bit more coaxing and my assurance that I wouldn't have trouble navigating a filing cabinet, Carol reluctantly produced 2 binders. One was a thick volume labeled Oak Haven Meeting Minutes Archive. The other, far slimmer, was titled Annual Financial Summaries. She nearly insisted on making the copies herself, likely to ensure I didn't leave with originals or stumble upon something Periwinkle preferred remained buried. I thanked her warmly and left, clutching what felt like a gold mine of potential ammunition. That evening, with coffee brewing and my sapphire sectional finally in its rightful place, regal in velvet and utterly magnificent, I dove into the documents. The bylaws were a thicket of legal jargon and bureaucratic stipulations, but I saw the threads of power running through them, gray zones and ambiguous rules easily manipulated by someone with control and no accountability. The CC&RS were a dense web of restrictions, many outdated, many absurd. But the true prize was in the meeting minutes and financial summaries. The minutes stretched back 3 years, conveniently the exact duration of Priscilla's tenure. They were neatly typed, formally structured, and disturbingly vague. Decisions were often attributed to board consensus without listing who voted or how. Expenditures were noted, but under broad categories like landscaping enhancement or community improvement initiative, often with suspiciously round figures. I cross-referenced the line items with the financial summaries. One entry stood out. Landscaping enhancement project, spring of last year, cost listed at $15,000. Yet during my own walkthrough of Oak Haven, the only noteworthy landscaping I had seen was an ornate rose garden in front of Periwinkle's house. Technically, the land was part of HOA common property, but it undeniably enhanced her front yard more than anyone else's. I made a note. Another red flag was a recurring charge: legal consultation fees. They appeared frequently and in significant amounts, despite the neighborhood being a peaceful one, at least on the surface. What legal conflicts was Oak Haven constantly fighting? Or more likely, what conflicts was Priscilla creating with HOA money? The summaries also revealed something I'd heard murmured during the sofa debacle. HOA dues had increased by 15% 2 years ago and another 10% last year, justified by vague claims of rising operational costs. Yet services didn't seem to have improved. If anything, they had quietly eroded. I needed more than paperwork. I needed testimony. I began with Mr. Henderson, the elderly gentleman from whom I'd bought the house. I invited him over for coffee under the pretense of asking for handyman recommendations, but I gently steered the conversation toward the HOA. He was more than willing to talk. "Priscilla Periwinkle," he said, shaking his head with a dry smile. "That woman's a piece of work. She's been president for 5 years now, not 3. Consolidated power early on. Treats the HOA like it's her own little fiefdom. Her husband? Poor man just tries to stay out of sight." He confirmed the truth behind the rose garden. "We call it the Periwinkle Memorial Garden. Paid for by HOA funds. Tended by HOA landscapers. But don't let your dog get too close. She fined old Mrs. Albright $50 because her poodle sniffed the petals." He told me more. Fines over colored Christmas lights. Demands to repaint front doors she found aesthetically jarring. Even a drawn-out battle over a child's treehouse that she claimed violated community harmony. Most folks just pay the fines to avoid the hassle, he admitted. She'll drown you in letters, special meetings, even tries to involve the city. You challenged her. That makes you a threat. I showed him my violation notice. He didn't even look surprised. Retaliation, he said flatly. You're on her list now. He also gave me a lead. Tom Albright, Mrs. Albright's son, used to serve on the HOA board. He had once questioned Periwinkle's spending. Almost immediately he was buried under absurd violations. Grass an inch too long, leaves in the gutter. He eventually resigned and moved away. But if I could find him, he might be willing to talk. Over the next week, I quietly approached more neighbors. Some were nervous. Others opened up in hushed tones behind closed doors. A young couple had been fined for leaving trash bins out an hour past pickup. A family got a warning because their basketball hoop was visually disruptive. A pattern emerged: selective enforcement, petty punishments, all under the thin veil of maintaining neighborhood standards. But this wasn't governance. It was control. I started documenting everything. I photographed the rose garden, pristine and sprawling, in contrast to the neglected flower beds in truly communal areas. I logged her escalates patrols past my house. My security cameras caught her circling, sometimes twice a day. One evening, while reviewing footage, I caught something especially telling. Priscilla was walking her fluffy white Bichon Frise, off-leash, in direct violation of HOA rules she regularly enforced on others. As she passed my driveway, she paused, pulled out her phone, and took photos of Dave's parked car. The next day, Dave received a violation notice at his own house 2 streets over. The charge? Parking a vehicle in a state of disrepair, damaging community aesthetics. The fine? $75. She wasn't just targeting me. She was coming for anyone close to me. And that lit a fire. I tracked down Tom Albright. He was hesitant at first, burned by his own experience, but when I showed him what I gathered, financial inconsistencies, the retaliation against Dave, the vague legal fees, he opened up. She runs the board like a monarchy, he said. The treasurer, Gregory Thwaite, does whatever she tells him. I once asked for a breakdown of the legal fees. She shut it down immediately, said it was for confidential litigation. I'm convinced it was just threats against residents. He shared copies of old board emails and agendas. They showed him raising polite but persistent questions, always followed by violation notices. The pattern was clear. Documented. Beautifully so. He even gave me the name of the landscaping company, Pedal Pushers Incorporated. I called, pretending to price out a similar rose garden. The quote they gave me was less than half of what Priscilla had reported. Her numbers didn't just look suspicious. They reeked of misuse. I knew I couldn't storm the next HOA meeting waving my own violation notice like a crusader. That would be too easy to dismiss as a personal vendetta. I needed numbers. I needed the voices of the community. So I created a survey. No names. Just simple, direct questions about HOA satisfaction, transparency, fairness, and whether residents had ever felt unfairly targeted. Late one Sunday night, Dave and I slipped 100 copies into every mailbox. Each included a return envelope addressed to a P.O. box I'd opened specifically for this mission. Within a week it was overflowing. Over 60% of households responded. The stories mirrored my own. Unfair fines. Murky finances. Fear of challenging authority. Many named Periwinkle directly. I compiled the data into a spreadsheet. Charts. Summaries. Anonymous testimonials. It was damning. I also dug into the legal fees. The law firm listed was real, barely. Dewey Chetman Howe. A punchline masquerading as a practice. One of its partners, Alastair Finch, was regularly seen playing golf with Priscilla's husband at the country club. Not proof of wrongdoing, but another shadow in the pattern. Piece by piece the case came together. Financial discrepancies. Documented retaliation. Community unrest. A clear personal vendetta, all triggered by a sapphire sofa. I compiled everything into a binder. Tap. Index. It was a project manager's dream, a weaponized dossier. The HOA meeting was scheduled for the 3rd Thursday of the month. I circled the date on my calendar and marked it in red. Oak Haven's clubhouse was a beige building with fluorescent lights and dated decor, but tonight it crackled with something electric. The room filled fast, far more than usual. My anonymous survey had struck a nerve. Priscilla Periwinkle took her seat at the front, flanked by Treasurer Thwaite, who looked like he wanted to vanish, and two other board members, a nervous woman named Agnes and a stone-faced man named Arthur. I sat in the center of the room. My binder was in my briefcase. And I was ready. Priscilla Periwinkle sat at the head of the room, her expression unreadable, wrapped in a power suit the color of dried blood. Her silver hair sat atop her head like a lacquered helmet, unshaken by the rising tension. She opened the meeting with a glowing report of her leadership, citing fiscal responsibility and the preservation of community standards. The irony clung to every word. You could have spread it like jam on toast. She moved through the agenda with the breezy confidence of someone used to obedience. When she reached new business, her tone was casual, dismissive. "Any items?" she asked, clearly expecting silence. I raised my hand. "Yes, President Periwinkle. Mark Thompson, 47 Oak Haven Drive. I have several." A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Heads turned. Her smile tightened only slightly. "Mr. Thompson," she said, "please be brief. We have a lot to cover." "I'll be as brief as the seriousness of these matters allows." I stood, binder in hand. "First, I'd like to address a series of recent and I believe retaliatory violation notices, issued to myself and to an associate, stemming from a disagreement I had with you regarding ownership of a personal item. A sapphire blue velvet sectional, to be exact." There were gasps. A few chuckles. Priscilla's face darkened, nearly matching her suit. "That matter was a misunderstanding, Mr. Thompson. The violations were issued in accordance with HOA procedures." "Was it standard procedure to accuse me of grand larceny and call the police over a sofa?" I asked calmly. "Especially when I had the proof of purchase ready and you did not. The store you claim to have bought it from, Lashy Chateau Boutique, doesn't even exist." I connected my laptop to the projector. On screen appeared a notarized letter from Miller's Fine Furniture, verifying the sofa was indeed mine. Their new Azure Dream model. No connection to any boutique, fictional or otherwise. The room fell silent. Priscilla's voice sharpened. "This is outrageous slander. That matter was private." "It was settled," I cut in my favor, "because your claim was baseless. And it was followed by these." I displayed the violation notices. The dates lined up perfectly, right after the sofa incident. One for me. One for Dave. Clear, documented retaliation. "That is not standard procedure, President Periwinkle. That is abuse of power." Gregory Thwaite tried to interject, mumbling something about decorum, but Priscilla silenced him with a glance, her eyes blazing. "If you have a complaint, Mr. Thompson, there are official channels. I believe this is the official channel for matters concerning HOA governance and conduct," I said. "And next, I'd like to address financial transparency." I flipped to the next tab. "Let's start with the landscaping enhancement project. $15,000. The only notable landscaping done during that period was the rose garden directly in front of your house. According to Pedal Pushers Inc., the installers, that garden should have cost less than half." The screen showed the HOA ledger next to Pedal Pusher's quote. Then a photo of the garden. Gasp. Murmurs. Agnes, the board's nervous member, looked positively queasy. Arthur, the quiet one, leaned forward. "This is preposterous." Priscilla stood, her voice cracking. "Our financials are audited. You have no right to accuse." Then explain the discrepancy. Or the Community Improvement Initiative, for $22,000. Which produced nothing except a new entrance sign with your name on it. Or the excessive legal fees paid to Dewey Cheatham and Howe, where one partner is a known associate of your husband. I clicked to the next slide. Tom Albright's signed statement appeared, detailing his experience being retaliated against after questioning those very expenses. The room buzzed like a wasp nest. Priscilla's composure broke. "These are lies. Fabrications by a disgruntled newcomer. Security, remove this man." But there was no security. Just Carol from the management office, pale and fidgeting near the exit. And about 70 homeowners, most now looking furious. Then Mr. Henderson stood up. "I think Mr. Thompson is raising questions many of us have had for years," he said, lifting a survey form. "But we were too afraid to ask." Others rose too, holding their surveys. "What about the assessment increases?" shouted someone from the back. "Where's that money gone?" "My fine for holiday lights was absurd," another yelled. The fear cracked and gave way to fury. The room surged with voices, questions, accusations. Priscilla looked around wild-eyed. Her grip on the room, on the HOA, was slipping through her fingers. All because of a velvet sofa and someone willing to fight back. She slammed the gavel. Order. This meeting is adjourned if you cannot maintain decorum. But it was too late. Arthur, the stoic board member, spoke clearly and evenly. Priscilla, Mr. Thompson has raised serious concerns. With evidence. These require answers. Agnes nodded slowly. Gregory Thwaite stammered, everything is perfectly standard procedure. His voice was drowned out by shouts for details, transparency, justice. I raised my hand. The room quieted. President Periwinkle. Board members. I'm not just here to complain. I have proposals. First, I formally request a full forensic audit of the HOA's finances covering the past 5 years. A wave of agreement swept the room. Second, I continued, holding up the collated survey results. Here is data from over 60% of the community. It shows dissatisfaction with financial practices, rule enforcement, and leadership. I displayed the charts. They spoke for themselves. And finally, I said, given this evidence of abuse, I call for a vote of no confidence in President Priscilla Periwinkle. A stunned silence. Then Priscilla gasped. A vote? You can't. That's not on the agenda. Actually, Arthur said, holding up a copy of the bylaws I distributed earlier, Article 7, Section 4 allows it if 10% of members present petition for it. Mr. Henderson quickly counted hands. Well over the threshold. Gregory looked away. Agnes stared at the floor. Arthur nodded solemnly. The motion is valid. We will proceed to a vote. Ballots were passed out. Collected in a plastic container. Carol helped, visibly nervous but perhaps relieved. While votes were counted, more residents stepped forward with their own stories. Petty fines. Threats. Surveillance. The room was alive with memories no one had dared to speak aloud until now. Arthur stood. Silence fell. The results of the vote are as follows. Votes in favor of no confidence, 68. Votes against, 3. Abstentions, 1. Stunned silence. Then cheers. Priscilla sat frozen, her face pale and empty. Therefore, Arthur declared, Priscilla Periwinkle is hereby removed from the office of HOA president, effective immediately. She stood, face twisted with rage. This is illegal. A kangaroo court. I'll sue every one of you. She grabbed her handbag, stormed out, heels striking the floor like gunshots. The Escalade screeched out of the parking lot seconds later. Arthur turned to the remaining board. Well, he said, smiling faintly, we have a vacancy for president. And a forensic audit to commission. The meeting continued, this time with purpose. Arthur was elected interim president. A reform committee was created. Tom Albright agreed to return as a consultant. And I volunteered to assist. Rules were revised. Fines reviewed. Many rescinded or refunded. The board issued formal apologies to residents wrongfully targeted. Meetings became open forums, not edicts from above. The Periwinkle Memorial Rose Garden was quietly redesigned as a shared park space, dedicated to community unity. As for Priscilla, she and her husband soon sold their house and moved to a gated community in another state. One known for its even stricter HOA rules. Poetic if nothing else. And the sapphire sofa? It's still there. Plush, radiant, and supremely comfortable. Every time I sink into it, I remember that sometimes, standing up to a petty tyrant with nothing but truth, records, and resolve can do more than protect your rights. It can change a community. So if you're facing your own Prissy P, remember, document everything. Know the rules. Rally your neighbors. And never underestimate the power of well-organized facts. Because sometimes a laser printer and a velvet sofa really are mightier than the gavel.